Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Two Doors podcast. I am here with Basarat. Basarat is an 8-time Microsoft Most Valuable Professional for Web Development. He's authored multiple books like Beginning Node and TypeScript Deep Dive, as well as he runs a very successful YouTube channel called Basarat. Baz also created his own course platform called BooleanArt.com, which provides a complete learning path for modern web development, including JavaScript, TypeScript, React, Playwright, and more. He's currently working as a portfolio manager at Global Tech, which is a global technology organization providing cutting edge technological innovations to transform telecom, broadband, media, and e commerce. Having worked at the likes of Ericsson, Canva, Seek, Pepperstone, and Australia Post, Baz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction, by the way.
Wasn't it? I mean, you're a high achiever, 8 times MVP. That's pretty huge. But yeah, how do you feel when you hear all of this?
I'm very lucky to have a lot of the opportunities that I've had. And specifically talking about the 8-time MVP, I actually used to just say Microsoft MVP, but it's sort of at the point where I don't know if I will be renewed. I'm hopefully I will be, but it's not something I actually have been pursuing for the past 5 years. It's just something that happens organically because of the work that I do, the online tutorials I put out, the help I provide on Stack Overflow and other platforms. So at some point it was like, if I'm not renewed, then what do I do? Then I was like, okay, so this is something that I can always have, like 8-time MVP, and then I'll keep incrementing it as it keeps on going.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very, very impressive. And I think you've educated me. They invite you to this. Like, you don't apply for it as well. You have to be
Yeah.
identified. And I mean, MVP of anything is great. Like, maybe once, twice, three, four, five, with six, seven. We're talking 8. So, no, it's great to have you on. And you're someone that really impresses me with technology. Like, I've seen you talk many times. I obviously worked with you for many, many years as well, Baz. So, yeah, it's great to hear because where does I mean you don't accidentally become like author of 2 books, accidentally trip into building a platform like you've had. Like, I'd love to hear more about Boolean Art as well, and then also accidentally doing this. So yeah, maybe talk us through what you would like, how you get to this level.
It's all about going with the flow, honestly. And the desire to excel at different things. And like, now in retrospect, I can sort of see that, okay, maybe all the other things that I do that I'm actually not happy about, that I keep doing them. Example of that would be music. So I play guitar. I used to play in a band even very recently. Time commitments, now I work 2 time zones, so time commitments has sort of forced me out of the band. But I was questioning that, like, I'm investing so much time in this, and there is definitely no commercial return for this, but I do it because I enjoy it and I want to excel in this. The same things have happened in the commercial successes as well. It's simply the desire to be good at something. Specifically talking about TypeScript as an example, I was actually inspired by other developers, like during my formative years, and one of them was John Skeet. He was great in C Sharp. He was the top contributor for Stack Overflow for C Sharp. He became a Google employee as well, a senior position, like an individual contributor kind of a thing. So I was like, okay, that's one roadmap. So when TypeScript was released, I read the language specification because that was the only source of documentation at that point, like proper documentation. And then started helping people on Stack Overflow with that. And that sort of got me into that thing. And then from there, I figured out that, like, one of the pain points at that point was finding type definitions for JavaScript libraries out there, and there was already a solution for that called Definitely Typed. So jumped in there, started helping over there, and, like, talking about becoming an MVP as an example, the TypeScript team's official stance is that there are no MVPs for TypeScript. That's what, like, people actually ask them that, why is this guy, like, they have F sharp MVPs. That was the thing, right? .NET was an MVP ecosystem. It was and is an ecosystem. They were like, why is this guy not a MVP? They were like, okay, we don't formally do MVPs. And then what happened was that someone within the dev team, within the developer technologies MVP ecosystem, had a crossover from .NET as well as TypeScript, and they nominated me. then I just put in the thing that you have to put. So you just have to reply to a few number of questions so that they can. So someone else has nominated you, but someone else has to review it. So you sort of have to provide those kind of answers. I did that. I didn't expect anything off of it, and I became an MVP. And for the log time, like for the first 4 years, 5 years, I was like, I'm an MVP, but I don't tell people like I was a TypeScript MVP because I was like imposter syndrome. Like maybe TypeScript is not supposed to have MVPs, but then the person who manages the different MVPs from the Microsoft side would introduce me as a TypeScript MVP, and I was like, okay, I can say that I'm a TypeScript MVP instead of being like a developer MVP.
And on that point as well, Baz, because you made a very good point there about imposter syndrome. So how do you cure imposter syndrome? Like, how do you keep? Because I've definitely had it. And how do you
Mhm.
keep stepping forward?
It's interesting. We've all had it. Another example of the imposter syndrome that I had was that my bachelor's was actually in telecommunication, but my first job was in software. For the first 6 years, I worked in software, and then when I moved to Australia, I was like, I keep working in software, but my education does not reflect that. So maybe I should get a master's degree, and I did get that. I got that from ANU, high distinction in all subjects. So and that what all that did was clear my imposter syndrome. But it's interesting also that people with privilege, like having a degree is a privilege, don't necessarily realize the impact it has. Only when someone doesn't have that privilege can they see that the impact it has. So maybe that getting that software focused degree did help me. But continuing on that path of this particular imposter syndrome, I recently had a chat with someone and they were like, okay, since you're working on Boolean art, maybe you could even go to universities and stuff and give lectures on that. And I was like, oh, I don't have a PhD. And they were like, what has that got anything to do with it? And so, yeah, it's just have good conversations with people. It's good to be humble. I think the imposter syndrome leads to that, and people with imposter syndrome sort of I find it can limit you, but it can also keep you happy in a sense. You can be like, okay, I have more to do, I have more to learn, instead of being like, okay, what now, and going into that kind of a state of mind. There's a trade-off.
True. I think you can also leverage it, like, is in going, okay, I feel imposter syndrome, therefore I'm going to prove myself and then work really hard and perform on this, because everything is skill acquisition, right? Like you
Mhm.
learn from reading the TypeScript notes to then be able to contribute. And someone that I really respect highly in this field, because you're resilient. Like, I remember when you walked through the scene and you were flying the TypeScript flag, and some of the JavaScript developers were like, "No, we don't like this." And now look at it. Number one in the world of popularity. People are understanding why they're utilizing TypeScript. So yeah, how do you build resilience, Baz? How do you do that?
um, Unrelated to the resilience questions, one thing
Yeah.
that I find interesting now compared to before is I used to push TypeScript, right, and I still do, but now people are actually already using TypeScript in a number of the places where I try to push it, and it's like I feel worried that is it my choice that has sort of like led to that thing, or is it actually that popular? But it is actually that popular. And in terms of resilience, I've sort of I've caved on a few things as well. As an example, React is great. It's one of the best things out there. Um, I don't like having the state and the UI coupled tightly together, but that's the React way in a sense that like useState is something that exists within React. Even when you sort of try to go away from it, there is context that like the React concept of a context that sort of manages your state. So even if you are using Redux, you still have to render it within a React tree in order to get it into the right UI state. Um, and it's like using context is becoming even more important with server side React, because you sort of have to render it on the server and then hydrate it on the client, and sort of like you cannot have a global state variable separate from React anymore. um, so I would like a solution that separates the DOM from state completely, so you can have it completely off to the side, and it can just the business logic and the UI can be completely separated. But I have caved in this, and the courses that I teach them the React way. Similar with Next.js as well. I teach it the Next.js way, even though I might have differing opinions. Previously, I would be like, okay, I'm not going to teach JavaScript. I'm only going to teach TypeScript. Even in that, I have sort of swapped. I've sort of realized that, okay, people will not learn TypeScript properly unless they sort of get a JavaScript course. So I do have a JavaScript course that uses no TypeScript, only teaches JavaScript. Because that's the next level of developer that I'm targeting is not a senior developer that already knows JavaScript and wants to learn TypeScript. It's that person who's walking into the field and questioning if JavaScript right is web development right for me. So you sort of have to teach them JavaScript without any types, and then you sort of add TypeScript on top. Um,
And tell us
so
more about your
it's a give and take.
courses, Baz. Tell us more about your courses. So, like, say we sign up or whatever. Like, yeah, give us more about the context of learning and format.
Yes, so there are even talking about other organizations are working with, even with global tech as an example, they have learning platforms as well. Like there's a lot of impressive work. Where I'm going with this is there's an approach that I have taken, and there are alternative approaches as well.
Mm.
There's an interesting alternative approach that's worth mentioning in the context of global tech, where you sort of we a lot of junior developers are actually using AI to learn. So what you can
Yeah.
do with this system, one of the systems that they are working on, is you only get questions that you should ask. So because you still need to know the right questions to ask. As an example, in the JavaScript course, the question you should ask is, how do you declare a variable? What is a variable? What are the different types of declaring a variable? What is scope? Like these are questions that so you can sort of put these questions in a roadmap that makes it very easy for the product to build that roadmap as well, like the course designer to build that roadmap as well. But then it gives you a very nice experience that you would organically sort of want to find in the next generation of learning. uh, but taking a step back, my education platform is very much a traditional education platform, the Boolean Art. It's interesting. I sort of feel like a bit of a dinosaur there, but there's always room for traditional kinds of learning. Like new schools still open up, colleges still open up, and there's like some pushback as well on using the modern tools and sort of preserving some of what makes us human in the traditional forms of learning, kind of a thing. And sort of my personal platform is sort of in that category where I will teach the things as if you are reading a book. Of course, more entertaining because it's video, and then it's more interactive as well because they have rich lesson descriptions, and you can click through the examples, and it opens up an online playground, and you can play with that thing. That's sort of what I'm. But one of the key things of this course platform, my own course platform, is that if I'm teaching you TypeScript, I sort of assume you know JavaScript, so I sort of have a separate course on JavaScript. Whereas if you were to buy just an individual course for someone, they would sort of keep on repeating the same things as well, and they can sort of assume less. And it's very ad hoc. Whereas my whole plan was, I teach you JavaScript, I teach you TypeScript, I teach you React, and I teach you Next.js, like a complete thing. So you waste less time and learn in a consistent fashion with someone who's actually taken the effort of building a roadmap for you.
And that's powerful because you've obviously reflected on how you've learned. And so then you're empowering these next generation. And I like the point where you say, hey, if you are a senior, you can do it over here. But it sounds like there's different roadmaps for different courses, and you've made it interactive with a playground. And yeah, it's a very powerful system because I always respect people that have been in an industry for a number of years because you've seen so many transitions. And like right now, I mean, it's taken us 14 minutes, but AI is here, right? And it's how you
Mhm.
utilize AI as a tool, and it enables you. Like, I'm sure you use it in different ways, but where do you think of the future of tech is going, Baz? Like, if you were to recommend, obviously, by the sounds of it, you're recommending more juniors there. Like, you've got to know some basics, know the fundamentals, and scale through that way. But yeah, where do you think the future of tech is?
So AI is an interesting thing in terms of tech as well. In terms of I've watched some of your other podcasts as well, and one of the mention over there was that technology takes jobs. That's just the nature of technology. You get a tractor, you need less laborers. And the same is true with AI as well. So it will take jobs, but then it creates new jobs as well, and it creates new opportunities as well. Like this learning platform that Global Tech was working on is one of those examples, right? Where it's a form of learning that didn't exist before. You observe that the market is doing that, and then you sort of bring it to into your own product. Uh, and then like another product, like with banking software as well, they have this software called Cadence, that they're using AI to sort of highlight to the managers what needs their attention more than the other things. There's a lot of opportunity with AI, specifically talking back to coding and AI and what it means to developers. It's definitely going to help you create things. I keep using the AI tools myself as well. The current state of the things is not ideal. It does a lot of copy paste kind of code. It does uh, it doesn't refactor it the way a senior developer would refactor it. There are w- and finding the right abstraction even for a senior developer sometimes can be difficult. So senior developers might over engineer things. So you sort of have to uh, not be completely copy paste, not be completely three levels of function calls. You sort of have to find the middle ground, and AI is more towards that category. I think that it might actually swing towards the other end as well at some point. uh, Nobody knows the future. Currently it's not a threat. Will it become a threat? I can't know. I don't think anybody can.
Yeah. I see you as a powerful communicator, right? You've obviously honed that skill and that art. Like you give big talks at the React meetup, you give at many conferences. And I think that as a junior developer, learning how to communicate is so key these days because I feel the future is definitely how you think. Like to your point of like, okay, AI is A, but a senior developer is B. It's like, yeah, you can do A, but it's not going to be as functional because you haven't thought, okay, well, what's the user? Why are we doing this? It's a different level of thinking. So, yeah, I believe it's communication and thinking ability, but then also you've got to know the fundamentals. Like, there's no skipping. You can't just jump like straight into being a senior.
100%. And as you've mentioned, communication is definitely a very important skill to have. If I could go back to one of the questions that you asked, that attributing my success and growth and all of these things, it's communication has played a vital role in that. um, in terms of communication, you sort of have to do the traditional things of writing without AI, like a blog post without AI, um, trying to author a book. Although like nowadays I don't even know if that's a viable career choice for anyone. It was never it wasn't a viable career choice even when I wrote it, and I don't think it was for you either. It was more of a creative process, but it's I think it's becoming even less appreciated. uh,
Mm.
but it's a great way to develop. Writing a book is a great way to develop your communication skills, and it will definitely help people in their career.
That's a great point. So, getting your thoughts down with clarity by writing them is a way to enable you to be a more powerful communicator. I mean, I've only published one book. You've published a few, and we had Ryan Big on the podcast the other week, and he's wrote multiple. And the great point, the reason I'm sharing that, Baz, is that you never know who's going to read your books. Like he has messages from people in South Sudan saying, "This has been great. It's helped me do this. It's helped me do that." So yeah, your books on Node and TypeScript obviously impacting. So yeah, you can't downplay that. And what about if you could go back to your younger self and talk to them like on that career progression, like what advice would you give them?
It's interesting. I've thought about that multiple times. You see a path in front of you when you are deciding what you're going to do with your life in term by observing other people that have succeeded. But the times are changing so fast that even if you follow the same path yourself, the outcome would be different. The reason why I'm mentioning this is the advice I would give to myself back then is not something that would be relevant to someone who's starting now. But
Mm.
that aside, the advice that I would give to myself, I think, just be fine. Like I'm very fortunate. I like around 10 years ago, I sort of looked at the trajectory of my life and my family, even like my parents and that kind of life, and it was always on the up. um at some point, like, road bumps are there, and definitely, like, I'm not looking forward to the unexpected things that can happen in the future. But it has all been positive. I have been very fortunate. Like, even, like, you think that, okay, my true financial success started when I was 30. I'm actually 40 right now. I don't look my age, people keep telling me. But so my financial success started 30 when I actually immigrated to Australia. I started with the bank balance of a reset to zero. When you think about, like, the average person who's born in Australia career versus my career, they would have at least like a 10-year kind of opportunity, uh, potentially. Not everyone, but many of them would. Um, but despite that, when I compare it to myself, I can see that it has been positive. Like, I got into a good university. I got a first job in a nice telecom organization. Then I got this opportunity to immigrate to Australia. Then I came over here, got nice jobs over here, worked as Seek and Canva and other. So, like, as an aside, working at these big tech organizations is very much, it's better than a degree in a sense of, like, job hiring prospect. So, like, that would potentially be one advice to a younger self. If you get into a bigger organization that's recognized within a particular area, for example Australia in this case, new doors keep opening up for you. um so it has been all positive. I don't think I would change anything. I just be happy is what I would say, but I was always happy anyway, so I don't have great advice there.
I love how your thinking ability made me rethink the question, because you're so right. It's like, well, what advice would you give the more juniors? Maybe is a better one. And so what I picked up there is that you've got great levels of introspection, but also like the road bumps, they're always going to be there. So it's overcoming. Like, I know the difficulty that people go through when you are going for excellence, because you are going to fail. But it's our mindset of going, okay, well, what lesson can I learn from that failure in order to enable me to go to the next stage? And especially when you're multifaceted, like you've done so much, Baz. Like, I can see your YouTube plaque behind there from, having over 100,000 subscribers. And yeah, it's brilliant. So yeah, any last thoughts, any last wisdoms you'd love to share with people?
I can teach people to have the skills that are definitely in demand, but finding the right opportunity is something that is still elusive to me. So having a perfectly well built engineer is something that I can create, but then they still have to go through interviews, and then uh, someone has to take a risk on that engineer that they're going to give that opportunity. Well, one great advice would be, look for graduate programs, but that sort of implies that you're going through a graduation in a good university. I've seen great success with that. I've had colleagues at Australia Post, lifetime colleagues that I've made now, much junior to me, but who came in through the graduate program in Australia Post from universities like Monash and Melbourne Uni. Now these are big universities. These are top 8 universities. It's hard to get into there, and then it's hard to afford it, and all that goes with it. um but like, that's one easy path. But then more recently, actually, a colleague's partner got into this government sponsored thing where they would, even they would teach with General Assembly, which is a sort of like a code camp here in Australia. It's pretty global, actually, but it's available in Australia as well. And so that was more of a government kind of a thing. They teach you for free from General Assembly, and then now they're working at a bank here in Australia. I wouldn't mention the bank, but I think that might disclose too much about that individual. I don't want to do that. So there are opportunities. Look for people that are willing to train and hire. I think that's the common thread in these two things. uh, I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been absolute pleasure picking your brain, Baz. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.